Hey guys, tonight we slip off our sandals and pad softly into the dusty streets of an ancient world, a world of baked brick, slow sunrises, and soft clatter from far-off courtyards. You are not just anyone tonight. You're a scribe. Not a priest, not a farmer, not a king. Just one of the few lucky souls in 2400 BCE who knows how to turn wet clay and sticks into language. You smell faint smoke rising from cooking fires as you blink your eyes open, a heavy morning stillness hovering around your mud brick home. A rooster calls, though technically it's probably more of a cranky goose, and outside a couple of goats are bleating in that way that says they're annoyed at the sun, too. A low breeze blows in from the river, carrying with it the earthy scent of damp silt and fresh reeds. The walls of your home, cool and slightly gritty under your fingers, still hold on to the night's chill. You sit up slowly, your woven blanket falling in folds around you. It's another day in the Sumerian city of Ur, or maybe it's Nippur. Historians still argue whether the earliest and most prominent scribes came from Nippur or Uruk. But tonight, let's just say you're where the action is. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're awake enough, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love to see where you all are tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You roll off your mat and pad to the low window, which is more of a square hole in the wall. Outside, the city is already murmuring with pre-dawn activity. You spot a woman shaking out a rug, a child chasing something that may or may not be edible, and a man yelling at a stubborn donkey that has parked itself directly in the middle of the path again. It's the same donkey every morning, and if it has a name, it's probably unprintable in cuneiform. You stretch slowly, feeling each joint creak like ancient wood. Your back gives a single loud pop, which your neighbor hears, judging by the loud "huh" from the other side of the wall. You scratch your head, brush dust off your arms, and squint at the pale orange sky. It's a good day to copy some tax receipts. See, the thing about being a scribe is that it's not glamorous, but it is critical. In Mesopotamia, where civilization is barely a few thousand years old, and everyone's still figuring out how not to drown during floods, writing is power. You're part record keeper, part clerk, part magical priest-like figure who somehow understands this weird system of marks in clay. You're trusted, respected, also occasionally yelled at for using the wrong determinative symbol for goat. A bowl of barley porridge waits for you. Thick, bland, and vaguely chewy. It's breakfast, but only just. You splash a bit of water over your face from a ceramic basin, the water warmed by last night's coals. Then you throw back a small cup of low-alcohol barley beer, which is more like chunky soup than anything you'd want at a party. It's room temperature, it's vaguely sour, but hey, it's tradition, and it keeps your insides regular, if you know what I mean. You slide your feet into sandals so worn the straps know your toes better than you do, and glance over at your stylus kit. It's neatly wrapped in linen, several sizes of reed pens, a smoothing stone, and a few bits of string for tying bundles of clay tablets. Some scribes use leather pouches, others just a basket. You're a satchel kind of person, very organized, except for the time you accidentally handed in a lunch wrapper instead of a tax summary. Now it's time to head to work. And no, there's no such thing as remote scribal work. You've got to haul your styluses, your blank clay, and your aching bones down the street and into the heart of the city. People think the invention of writing was all about poetry and epics, but let's be honest, it was mostly about collecting taxes and keeping grain accounts. The earliest written word was probably something deeply poetic like 2 sheep for temple goat fund. You step outside, blinking in the sun that's finally cresting the rooftops, its golden rays painting everything in soft warmth. You pull your linen overcloak tight against the morning breeze and start your walk toward the adobe, the scribal school and workplace. You nod to neighbors, one woman washing clothes in a clay basin, two boys chasing each other with sticks that are definitely not swords, and an old man who insists on sweeping the same 10 square inches every single day. The streets are narrow, dusty, and lined with low mud brick walls. Sometimes they widen unexpectedly to reveal a market stall or shrine. You pass by a baker who's already got date cakes lined up and steaming. You consider buying one, but remember the last time you tried to write with sticky fingers. As you pass the small temple of Nanshe, the goddess of social justice and fish. Yes, both, you murmur a small prayer out of habit. Scribal life may be dull, but it's not without pressure. One wrong wedge and someone could accidentally marry their cousin, or donate 4 cows instead of 2. The gods are in the details, and so are the lawsuits. So off you go, stylus satchel bouncing against your side, dust sticking to your ankles, and your head full of glyphs. It's a new day, and there are temple donations to log, inventories to count, and students to correct. Somewhere, someone will need a love poem translated. Somewhere else, a merchant is lying on his tax declaration. You're ready. You may not be a warrior or a king, but you hold something even rarer, the power of words in a world just waking up to what writing really means. You pass under a wooden lintel darkened by years of dust and hand scrubbing into the Iduba, the scribal school / office / everything. It's early, but already the main room buzzes with quiet action. Clay tablets stacked like fragile books, the occasional scrape of a reed stylus on moist clay, and someone trying to suppress a sneeze from the chalky air. The walls, lined with niches, hold dozens, maybe hundreds of inscribed tablets, some so old they've been copied 3 or 4 times by now, just to preserve them. The air smells faintly of damp earth and burnt incense, probably from the altar at the corner dedicated to Nizaba, goddess of writing. Her little clay statue stares at you with those perfectly round eyes. You nod in greeting. It's only polite to acknowledge your divine coworker. You settle into your spot, 3rd seat from the right, closest to the window that never quite opens. A pile of fresh, squishy clay tablets awaits. There's something satisfying about touching that cool, dense material, soft enough to press a stylus into, firm enough to hold a message for centuries. Historians still argue whether scribes reused old tablets by smoothing them out or if that was considered sacrilegious. Either way, you've been known to accidentally recycle practice tablets when you're short on space. Shh, don't tell the temple archivist. You roll out your tools. Styluses of different thicknesses, each one for a different kind of stroke-wide wedges, narrow tick marks, delicate corner dots. It's not unlike having a fancy calligraphy pen set, if calligraphy pens were made from plant stems, and you worked in a building that floods every spring. Across the room, a student grumbles at their clay. You glance over. Ah, yes, beginner glyphs, the classic "I fed a sheep" line that every novice practices 1,000 times. You remember it well. The frustration, the clay under your fingernails, the temptation to add a tiny doodle of a sheep just to break the monotony. One of the senior scribes catches your eye and sighs deeply. You sigh back in solidarity. It's going to be one of those days. Your first task. A temple record. The high priest dropped off a message that a new batch of barley has been donated and it needs logging. You press your stylus into the clay, slow and steady. The characters unfold like puzzle pieces, compact and square, tidy in their arrangement. One wrong line and barley becomes dung, which you'd really like to avoid, thank you. As you write, you hum quietly a tune passed down from your own teacher. It helps with the rhythm. One press, one pause. It's almost meditative, really, a sort of earthy yoga for your hands. There's even a bit of competitive pride among scribes who can press the straightest lines, the deepest wedges, the cleanest grids. You've won a few clay carving contests, not that you're bragging. Okay, maybe a little. Your calendar of offerings tablet from last year still sits on display in the main hall. Your tablet finished, you set it aside carefully. and reach for another. This one's a bit more exciting. It's correspondence. A letter from one merchant to another requesting clarification on the weight of silver exchanged during a recent transaction. You chuckle. You know both of these merchants. They squabble like children and routinely accuse each other of shortchanging. You suspect it's just a long-standing game between them now. Either way, you write out the message with formal flourishes, carefully maintaining neutrality. Scribes don't pick sides, at least not in writing. Somewhere in the back of the room, someone knocks over a water jug. The splash is immediate, followed by the groan of someone who now has to re-dry their clay. You glance up. One of the junior scribes looks mortified. You smile just a little. We've all been there. The clay slop disaster is practically a rite of passage. You take a brief break, leaning back and stretching your spine until it lets out that familiar little pop again. You sip from a small jar of date-infused water, sweet and slightly fermented. Not enough to fog the mind, but enough to remind you that sugar is a thing worth living for. You wander over to the back room, where more experienced scribes work on larger projects, legal codes, astronomical records, royal decrees. You spot a massive tablet in progress, its surface carved with orderly rows. It's part of a new law collection being compiled for the local governor. Nothing too groundbreaking, mostly reiterations about property lines, inheritance, and what to do if someone's donkey eats your grain. Spoiler, the donkey owner owes you double. As you examine the tablet, you hear someone mutter about the spacing of symbols in the margin. Historians still argue whether this formatting meant hierarchy or emphasis. The old man grumbles. You nod. It's a good question, and one with no clear answer. That's the thing about ancient writing. It preserves the message, but not always the meaning. There's room for debate, interpretation, and passive-aggressive corrections from rival scribes. Back at your desk, a new assignment appears. A student needs a sample copy of the instructions of Shurapak, a kind of wisdom text full of fatherly advice and moral lessons. You like this one. It has lines like, "Do not pass judgment when you drink beer, and do not steal from your friend's garden." Sage advice even in 2025. You carefully write out a passage, making sure to leave room for the student to copy it beneath your version. Your stylus dances over the clay almost automatically now. You've memorized this one, and while you're at it, you sneak in a tiny mark that only you will notice, a single extra wedge hidden in the margin. A scribe's private wink. A clay inside joke. The day continues like this. Quietly, steadily. Rows of glyphs taking shape under your fingers. Some days you wonder if anything you write really matters. But then you remember you're the memory of this place, the voice in the clay. Long after the voices go silent and the buildings fall, these words might still whisper to someone, if they can read them, that is. By mid-morning, the light streaming through the high-slit windows turns from soft gold to something more urgent, hot, sharp-edged, and eager to cook the top of your scalp. You shift your seat, trying to find a square of shade that doesn't exist. The clay in your hands is starting to dry too quickly, so you dab it gently with water from the bowl beside you. There's an art to it too much, and your wedge marks blur like spilled ink. Too little, and the surface cracks before you've written donkey. A bell rings from outside, 3 sharp clangs from a bronze disc hanging near the temple steps. It's not an emergency, it's just goat time. Mid-morning is when the goat herders guide their animals through the city's back lanes to pasture. And yes, you've learned the hard way to keep your sandals inside during the procession. The smell lingers. You step away from your writing bench for a moment. Stretching your arms up, you feel a few vertebrae shift, and the satisfying chorus of joints cracking echoes in the high chamber like some very lazy thunder. Around you, the scribes continue working in their quiet rhythm, a soft percussion of styluses tapping clay. You take your breakout in the small courtyard. The sun overhead is punishing, but there's an olive tree in the corner that offers just enough shade for a few minutes of respite. You lean against the trunk and close your eyes. Someone's baking something starchy and aromatic nearby. It smells like lentils and old ambition. You breathe it in and let yourself drift for a few long seconds, half listening to the rustling leaves, half wishing someone would invent sunglasses. A small boy runs past chasing a wooden hoop with a stick, yelling something triumphantly in Akkadian. You're not entirely sure what it means, but it involves chicken and dancing. Kids these days. You wander back inside where a junior apprentice has just made a tragic mistake. You recognize it instantly, the reversed glyph for king. Instead of praising the ruler, the sentence now implies the king is someone else's servant. Oops. You watch their face flush red as they realize, then freeze in terror. The supervising scribe doesn't scold, just gestures to the water bowl and smoothing stone. Lesson learned. You quietly pat the student's shoulder as you pass. Everyone gets one royal blunder. Back at your station, you open your clay kit again and pull out a slightly different stylus, one with a blunt edge. You've shaved yourself for smooth curves. It's time for something a bit more flowery. You've been commissioned to copy a hymn to Inanna, goddess of love, war, and general drama. The hymn is a strange and beautiful thing. Half poetry, half legal contract with the divine. There are lines about her burning eyes, her feet that bring both desire and destruction, and her tendency to rearrange the fates of men like furniture. It's not exactly light reading, but it is technically religious work, and therefore very important. You shape each mark with care, pressing into the tablet, slowly breathing in time with each glyph. You're not just writing words now. You're capturing rhythm, inflection, poetry in the rawest form. It's like trying to trap a song inside a brick. Outside, the afternoon heat deepens. You wipe sweat from your temple with the hem of your tunic. The air inside the scriptorium grows still and heavy. One of the elder scribes begins softly chanting from a memory, a lullaby-like cadence that matches the lines you're writing. It's not required, but it helps set the mood. And hey, anything that makes clay poetry less tedious is welcome. You can't help but smile at one line about Inanna planting her heel on the mountain's throat. Historians still argue whether that line is literal conquest or symbolic dominance in the cosmic order. You personally suspect it's a bit of both. The gods in Mesopotamia were not known for subtlety. You finish the hymn and lay the tablet aside to dry in the sun patch near the east wall. There's already a row of them lined up like an audience of tiny brown pillows, each one holding secrets, praise, or passive-aggressive property disputes. A runner arrives panting and holding a sealed clay envelope. Yes, an envelope. These are small, hollow clay shells enclosing a tablet inside. You crack it open carefully, reading the wedge-pressed summary, a land record request from a farmer claiming encroachment by his neighbor's irrigation ditch. Irrigation. Mesopotamia's favorite argument starter. You roll up your sleeves and start the reply. You'll need to reference temple records, land deeds, and possibly that one comically long poem comparing fertile land to the thighs of the goddess. Accurate, perhaps. Slightly awkward in a legal reply. Definitely. But that's your job. You bridge the divine and the bureaucratic. You take lofty hymns and muddy field measurements and preserve them in clay so people 2 towns over don't go to war over a misplaced furrow. Your fingers ache, but there's satisfaction in the work. In this dusty room with its cracked walls and whispering reeds, you are part of something larger, something meant to last. Maybe your writing isn't glorious or thrilling. Maybe no one will ever sing about your barley ledgers, but they'll read them. Someday, someone will understand this little world you've pressed into being, one wedge at a time. And somewhere out there, even now, a teenage student is wondering if there's a cuneiform emoji for help. The sun is now fully asserting its dominance, baking the courtyard's stones until they shimmer like mirages. You've positioned yourself near a shuttered window, catching the occasional breeze that sneaks in and immediately regrets it. The air carries with it the mingling smells of hot dust, old parchment, and the faintest whiff of someone's roasted onions from next door. Mesopotamia might not have invented deodorant, but it certainly perfected earthy. You stretch your fingers and roll your shoulders. The next task is neither poetic nor dramatic. It's in fact the least glamorous duty a scribe could hope for market tallies. You sigh quietly but obediently, pull the next clay tablet from the dry bin, and glance over the request. A merchant family from Ur wants a clean, clear record of barley weight, traded over the past moon cycle. Barley again. If this city were flooded in an apocalypse, future civilizations might think humans worshipped barley. Still, you get to work. The numbers are simple, the symbols repetitive. You drift a little as you press your stylus line wedge. Your mind wanders to the upcoming festival. The Temple of Enlil is planning a massive ceremony next week, and rumor has it that they're bringing in singers from Lagash. Exotic accents, new rhythms, and at least one guaranteed awkward dance move from your high priest. You're jolted from the barley trance by a junior scribe muttering curses under his breath. His clay tablet just cracked in half, completely betrayed by the heat. You wince sympathetically and make a mental note to tell him the trick. Dampen the surface again before working too long. No one teaches you that in scribe school, but you learn fast if you don't want your work literally falling apart in your hands. Once you've wrapped up the barley count, 4 dozen baskets traded, -2 for temple tax, plus a confusing entry. That just reads barley vanished. Possible rat, you take a break. It's too hot to eat anything hearty, so you grab a small flatbread from your satchel. Chew it slowly and contemplate the unspoken rule of ancient Mesopotamian cuisine. Flavor is optional, but chewiness is law. You spot a priest walking by, outside, robes fluttering, forehead gleaming. He holds a ceremonial staff in one hand and a basket of eggs in the other. There's something oddly comforting about that. Even divine intermediaries have errands. A commotion breaks your thoughts. A trader storms into the room, tablet in hand, waving it like a fly swatter. He's upset his order was recorded incorrectly. Instead of 10 bronze blades, the tablet reads 10 bronze beds. While that sounds luxurious, it's not exactly helpful when you're trying to arm a caravan guard. You quietly motion for him to calm down, sit down and breathe through his nose. You smooth the mistake and begin a corrected version. The stylus moves quickly now. You've done this so often you could almost do it with your eyes closed. Historians still argue whether scribes were simply record keepers or low-level bureaucrats, your teacher once told you. But let's be honest, we're also part-time therapists. You're starting to understand what he meant. Every emotional spike in this city eventually gets filtered through your stylus. You finish the correction and hand it back to the trader, who grumbles his thanks and disappears. You return to your workspace and stare at the next task. A marriage contract. A Mesopotamian romance. The formality, the precision, the poetic way two families agree to not sue each other. You begin inscribing the terms, the names, the dowry, the agreed-upon Latin division. This one's unusually detailed, even including a clause about who gets the goats if the couple separates. Love may be fleeting, but goats are forever. Somewhere behind you, someone starts humming a low, meandering tune that seems to match the scribbles of your stylus. The rhythm is meditative, and you find yourself sinking into the comfort of repetition. Clay wedge, name clause. Your stylus kisses the tablet in a steady tempo, and the story of two families merges into one grainy agreement. There's even a final blessing calling on Nabu, god of wisdom and writing. You always smile at that part. A shout-out to the home team. The room darkens slightly as a cloud passes overhead, offering the briefest relief from the afternoon blaze. You pause to look at the sky, marveling at the vastness beyond the tiny world of inkless paperwork. It's a reminder that everything you write today could someday vanish, crumble, lost, or buried under layers of dust and forgotten temples. And yet here you are, still doing it. There's something noble or stubborn in that. A tiny visitor skitters past your foot, a lizard unimpressed by your administrative nobility. You watch it dart toward a crack in the wall, pause, and then look back at you, as if to say, "You write about goats. I eat flies. We both do our part." You shake your head and chuckle softly, pressing the final seal on the contract with your cylinder stamp. A full scroll in clay forms solid, heavy, and legally binding. You place it beside the others in the drying lineup and briefly admire your handiwork. 10 tablets today, each one telling a story no one may ever read again. Yet somehow you still care. Your stomach growls. Lunch will be soon, and you're already imagining soft dates, more flatbread, and possibly some leftover lentil stew if you get lucky. You reach for your water jug, drink deeply, and wipe your mouth with the back of your hand. Just as you prepare to clean your stylus, a messenger appears at the doorway. "Urgent request from the northern granary," he announces, holding out another sealed clay envelope. You take it and sigh only half mockingly. "Let me guess, more barley." He grins. "Wheat this time." "Oh, how exotic." The wheat request, as it turns out, is a complicated mess, disguised as a simple inventory check. You stare at the tablet's message, squinting slightly, like it might make more sense if you look at it sideways. Apparently, the northern granary has recorded a surplus that doesn't match the original counts. Either someone's been exceptionally generous with their bushels, or more likely, someone can't tell the difference between a 3 and a 7 in cuneiform. You trudge outside, tablet under one arm, stylus tucked behind your ear, and begin the short walk to the granary. The sun blazes overhead, hot enough that you briefly consider switching careers to something indoors and air-conditioned, if only someone would invent that first. The streets are alive with sound donkeys, braying merchants, shouting kids, arguing about who threw the first mud clod. You nod to a priest polishing a bronze bowl, and he nods back with that particular expression that says, "We both know it's too hot for this." Arriving at the granary, you're greeted by the overseer, a wiry man with sun-wrinkled skin and the energy of someone who's been arguing about sacks of wheat for 20 years too long. He launches into his issue, immediately gesturing toward a set of numbered clay tokens. "I told them we logged 73, not 70, but the tablet says 70. Who is scribbling with their elbows?" You suppress a smirk and examine the tokens, then the original tablet. Sure enough, the wedge for 3 is faint, half smudged. Someone probably pressed it into the clay while it was too soft, then stacked it under another tablet before it dried. It's not malicious, just rushed. You note the correction, smooth the tablet carefully, and rewrite the number with clear, assertive wedges. 73. Boom, crisis averted. But of course, no job ends with just one number. The overseer sees you're competent and immediately throws more questions at you. How do we store the wheat to avoid rot? Can we log the lentil storage in the same set of tokens? Is there a standard unit for mildly damp? You answer as best you can, aware that you are somehow becoming the accidental consultant of ancient agricultural logistics. Eventually, with promises of a corrected record delivered by week's end, you leave the granary and wander back toward the scribe house. The walk feels longer in the heat, and you stop under a shaded awning to cool down. A boy passes carrying a clay jug balanced expertly on his shoulder. You give him a polite nod. He gives you the kind of look reserved for adults who look tired and vaguely responsible. Back at the scribe house, the air inside feels cooler relatively. You splash water onto your face from the communal basin and return to your seat. A few of your colleagues are hunched over their own tablets, while one senior scribe leans back with eyes closed, mouthing what might be a prayer or a very long complaint. You settle into your rhythm again, organizing the tablet stack beside you. Property contracts, merchant logs, one unusually smug-sounding poem to the moon god Sin. You pull the poem tablet closer. It's beautifully written, and the wedge marks are so precise they look carved rather than pressed. One line stands out. He guides the cattle through dreams and shines on the inkless pages. It's not exactly accurate, there's no ink here, but poetic license has always been a thing. As you read, you notice something unusual on the back, a tiny drawing scratched in the corner, a fish with wings. It's small, almost an afterthought, and almost certainly not sanctioned. Scribal graffiti. The quiet rebellion of someone trapped copying verses about cosmic justice all day. Historians still argue whether scribes had freedom to add small details like this, or whether these symbols were secret messages, inside jokes, or simply a way to stay sane. Either way, it's comforting to see that even in 2000 BCE, someone got bored and doodled a flying fish on official documents. You keep working. A new tablet lands at your station, this time a complaint from a carpenter about dishonest measurement stones used in a recent trade. He claims the merchant gave him less copper than promised using a weight stone that felt suspiciously hollow. You almost laugh, imagining someone shaving the inside of a rock to cheat the scales. There's no easy resolution here, so you begin drafting a standard arbitration summary. You'll send it to the temple judges. Their job is to pretend to look impartial while everyone waits to see who has better temple connections. Fairness exists, it's just a little negotiable. Your stylus clicks against the clay as you list the details. Carpenter's name, merchant's name, date of transaction, alleged weight discrepancy. You add a side note requesting a stone weighing inspection. That means someone else gets to go measure rocks all afternoon instead of you. Small victories. The shadows in the scribe house stretch longer now, and someone opens a jar of oil to refill the room's lamps. The scent is strong, earthy, and a little bit metallic, like ancient candle wax mixed with rust. You know that soon the lamps will flicker on and the room will fill with the glow of dancing flame. It's your favorite time of day, not because the work gets easier, but because the world slows down. Even the clatter of styluses softens. One of the apprentice scribes hands you a newly molded tablet, still moist and warm. It's for a will, a rare kind of document that carries both legal force and, surprisingly, often deeply human sentiments. You begin shaping the lines. The deceased wants his eldest daughter to inherit the house, the garden, and amusingly, the chair by the cool wall, specifically described as the good chair. You smile as you write it. People die, yes, but they still want someone they love to enjoy the good chair. You press your stamp to the bottom, sealing the document with your mark. Another life captured in clay, another small moment tucked away in the archive of humanity. The light outside has started to soften, casting a golden hue that seems to wrap the city in a warm, dusty blanket. Inside your scribe house, the air feels cooler, now the kind of relief that comes just before dusk settles fully. You take a moment to stretch your arms, feeling the stiffness creep in after hours of pressing stylus into clay. Your fingers, though calloused and sometimes aching, are the instruments of your craft, each wedge a tiny brushstroke on the vast canvas of civilization. Today's work has shifted from dry inventories and contracts to something more personal: letters. Letters. Think about it. People in ancient Mesopotamia, just like now, felt the urge to communicate across distance and time. You find that oddly comforting. The same impulse that makes someone type out a text or draft an email today was alive and well thousands of years ago, except your email is a carefully inscribed tablet delivered by a sweaty courier on foot or donkey. You carefully select a fresh clay tablet, smooth the surface, and begin composing a letter from a merchant in Babylon to his partner in Nippur. The language is formal but warm, filled with inquiries about health, recent business, and a subtle request for more dates from the southern orchards. Dates are the ancient world's candy, after all, sweet, sticky, and worth their weight in silver. As you write, you can't help but notice the tiny imperfections in the clay, little bumps and irregularities that remind you this isn't a factory-produced message, but something handcrafted and uniquely yours. It's like the difference between a printed card and a handwritten note, or for a modern analogy, between an emoji and a doodle. A fellow scribe peers over your shoulder, offering a dry comment about the flowery language. Your merchant is quite the poet, he jokes. You chuckle softly, reminding him that merchants have to keep good relationships, even if it means buttering up distant relatives with a bit of charm. One quirky detail about Mesopotamian letters is that some included little drawings or symbols like early emoticons to add emphasis or personality. You recall a tablet you saw once where a happy face was crudely etched beside the words, "Hope you are well." It's charming, and it humanizes the ancient text beyond the coldness of stone. Historians still debate the extent to which ordinary people wrote these letters themselves, versus relying heavily on scribes like you. Were scribes simply professional copyists, or did they sometimes embellish and interpret? The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. While finishing the letter, a sudden noise draws your attention. A clatter from the courtyard. You peer outside and see a group of children playing a game involving sticks and stones, shouting and laughing as they chase one another. Their carefree energy is a stark contrast to your meticulous work, but it reminds you why all these records matter. Someday someone might dig up your tablets and glimpse the pulse of this ancient city. The lives, the loves, the mundane moments. You return to your table and begin preparing the letter for drying and sealing. The clay is still soft enough to imprint the sender's personal seal, a unique mark that serves as a signature and a guarantee of authenticity. You roll the cylinder seal carefully across the clay, leaving a raised pattern of intertwined vines and a lion's symbols of strength and prosperity. This seal is more than a stamp. It's a badge of identity in a world where literacy is rare and trust even rarer. If the tablet is broken or tampered with, the missing or distorted seal would scream foul play. As evening deepens, the scribe house fills with the warm glow of oil lamps. Their flickering light casts long shadows, making the cuneiform wedges look like tiny hills and valleys on the tablet's surface. You glance around at your fellow scribes, their faces illuminated in soft light, some lost in thought, others quietly humming or whispering prayers. You feel a swell of pride mixed with exhaustion. This is your world. The dusty courtyards, the scent of drying clay, the rhythmic tapping of stylus on tablet. It's not glamorous, it's not fast-paced, but it's important. You are the memory keepers, the historians before history. Before you call it a day, you prepare a tablet to send to the temple archives, a summary of all letters received today. The archivists are the final gatekeepers tasked with preserving records for future generations, although exactly how long future is remains a mystery. Some tablets last millennia, others crumble within decades. You smile to yourself and whisper a little thanks to Nabu, the god of writing wisdom and scribes. May your stylus never break and your tablets always dry evenly. The next morning breaks slowly, the sun rising over the flat rooftops of Uruk, its pale light spilling into your modest room. You wake to the distant bleating of goats and the soft murmur of merchants setting up their stalls in the marketplace. The scent of freshly baked barley bread drifts through the open window, mingling with the earthy smell of mud brick falls warmed by the sun. You begin your day by preparing your writing tools, a small lump of clay to moisten the stylus, a collection of freshly made tablets, and the wooden writing board that keeps your workspace tidy. It's a routine that's as comforting as it is repetitive. As you settle into your work, your mind drifts to the importance of numeracy in your profession. Numbers are everywhere, accounting for grain deliveries, livestock, and laborers. Cuneiform signs for numbers look deceptively simple, but mastering their use is a feat in itself. You recall hearing that scribes often began their education by memorizing lists of numbers before moving on to words and complex texts. A quirky fact about Mesopotamian numerals is that they used a base 60 system, which explains why we still divide an hour into 60 minutes and a circle into 360 degrees. Talk about a legacy. So every time you check your watch or measure an angle, you can thank ancient scribes like yourself. Today's task is to compile a list of grain rations allocated to workers building a new city wall. You painstakingly record each name, amount, and date, ensuring accuracy. Mistakes could mean starvation or disputes, and no one wants to deal with a hangry laborer. Historians still argue whether these ration lists were purely administrative or if they also functioned as social contracts, reinforcing the loyalty between rulers and their subjects. Some tablets even hint at worker grievances or complaints hidden in coded language, a kind of ancient whistleblowing. During a break, you overhear a curious debate among fellow scribes about the origins of writing itself. Some claim it evolved solely from accounting needs. Others argue that early symbolic art and storytelling played a bigger role. It's a lively conversation that reminds you how layered and mysterious this whole writing thing is. Later, a delivery boy arrives with a fresh batch of tablets from the temple, including hymns and prayers. Handling these sacred texts, you feel a different kind of responsibility here. Your writing is not just practical but spiritual, a bridge between mortals and gods. A fun and lesser-known tidbit: some scribes were rumored to write secret messages in the margins of religious tablets, jokes, insults, or even recipes hidden in plain sight. Imagine being caught giggling over a clay tablet at the temple. As the sun climbs higher, you prepare to send the completed ration list off with a courier, sealing it carefully with the official stamp. The courier's mule is restless, and you gently soothe the animal, aware that this small moment of connection is rare in your busy day. Your thoughts wander to the bigger picture. Each tablet, each wedge is a thread in the vast tapestry of Mesopotamian life. Your humble role as a scribe might seem small, but you are, in essence, the living memory of your civilization. The afternoon brings a shift in your duties. Now you're tasked with copying a legal document, a contract between two farmers disputing water rights from the nearby canal. The tension in the air is palpable, even through the cool shadows of your writing room. You carefully replicate the text, aware that this tablet could decide who gets to irrigate their fields this season, a matter of life and death in these parts. You feel the weight of the stylus in your hand, each wedge a silent enforcer of law. It's fascinating how Mesopotamians developed such a complex legal system so early, centuries before other civilizations caught on. The Code of Hammurabi looms large in your mind, a set of laws etched in stone for all to see. Though you weren't around then, you understand the reverence for written law that still governs daily life. Here's a quirky tidbit: some contracts included curse clauses invoking gods to punish anyone who broke the agreement. Imagine signing a deal and risking divine wrath if you mess up. Definitely motivates honesty, or at least good p. As you write, your thoughts drift to the social status of scribes like yourself. Not quite nobility, not common folk either. Scribes were a privileged class with access to knowledge and power. Yet the job came with stress and high expectations. Mistakes could lead to ruin, and long hours bent over clay tablets weren't exactly glamorous. Historians still argue whether scribes had significant influence beyond record-keeping. Did they shape policy or simply record decisions? Some evidence suggests scribes were advisors to rulers, wielding soft power behind the scenes. You sometimes wonder if that's true or just wishful thinking. A strange but true detail: some scribes used a kind of shorthand or personal code to speed up their work, almost like texting abbreviations today. This practice puzzles scholars trying to decode certain tablets, as these scribal shortcuts are rare and inconsistent. The dispute over water rights feels oddly modern. You imagine similar fights over resources happening around the world today. You take pride that your role helps bring order and fairness, even if it's tedious. By evening, your eyes grow tired from the sharp contrasts of clay and stylus, the constant shifting of focus between signs. Still, the satisfaction of a completed tablet is a reward in itself. You carefully stack the legal documents ready for delivery to the local court. Outside, the call to evening prayers echoes faintly. You pause, considering how intertwined your work is with religion, law, and daily survival. It's a complex web, but you are at its heart, shaping history one wedge at a time. The late afternoon melts into early evening, and you find yourself at the bustling market square, not as a scribe, but as an observer. The aroma of roasted grains and sweet dates mingles with the dust kicked up by traders' sandals. You stroll slowly, letting your senses absorb the textures and sounds, a lively contrast to the quiet solitude of your writing chamber. It's in these moments that the pulse of Mesopotamian life becomes unmistakably clear. You watch as merchants barter over bolts of fabric and pots of honey, their animated exchanges punctuated by laughter and occasional sharp words. It's easy to see how the economy depends on this vibrant hub. As a scribe, you often record inventories and transactions like these, but seeing them in action brings the dry figures to life. A fascinating detail you recall is that some scribes also acted as official witnesses in trade deals, ensuring the terms were fair and properly documented. This dual role gave scribes a unique social standing, blurring the line between clerks and community pillars. Historians still argue whether scribes were entirely impartial or if their records sometimes favored powerful elites. Some tablets hint at cozy relationships between scribes and merchants, raising questions about bias in ancient record-keeping. You notice a curious sight: a street performer entertaining a crowd by mimicking the exaggerated gestures of a scribe writing furiously, an ancient form of slapstick comedy. The humor might be lost on some, but it makes you chuckle softly, the kind of lightness that balances the weight of clay tablets. Nearby, children chase each other around baskets of figs, their laughter a sweet counterpoint to the merchants' haggling. You remember that scribes were often taught in tablet houses alongside children of other classes, an interesting mix of social interaction and learning. As dusk deepens, you make your way to the temple district. The scent of burning incense drifts through the air, mixing with the cool night breeze. Priests and officials gather, and you know that some of your tablets' religious hymns and offerings will soon be read aloud here, connecting your words to the divine. The temple's massive ziggurat looms against the darkening sky, a silent testament to centuries of devotion and human endeavor. You feel a quiet pride, knowing your work supports such enduring institutions. And here's a quirky fact to mull over: some ancient scribes practiced palimpsests by scraping old tablets clean to reuse them, much like recycling. Imagine erasing your carefully inscribed work just to make space for something new, kind of like deleting texts when your phone's storage is full. As night settles, you head back home, the sounds of the market fading into peaceful silence. Your day as a scribe, part observer, part historian, part diplomat, winds down, and you prepare to rest before tomorrow's endless clay and wedge-shaped marks await once again. Night fully cloaks the city now, and you settle into your modest home where the faint flicker of an oil lamp casts dancing shadows on the mud-brick walls. Your hands are stained with clay dust, but your mind still swirls with the day's events. You reach for a simple meal: barley bread softened in a bit of date syrup, and a small bowl of lentils simmered with herbs. It's humble, but it fuels your long hours ahead. As you chew thoughtfully, you recall that scribes often enjoyed better food than common laborers, partly because their literacy afforded them roles with steady income. However, the exact diet varied greatly, and historians still debate how consistent these privileges were across different city-states and social ranks. You lean back and examine your writing tools: a reed stylus worn smooth from years of use and a stack of fresh clay tablets, waiting to be impressed with cuneiform marks. There's a rhythm to this work, a quiet meditation that allows your thoughts to settle even as you shape the administrative backbone of your society. Here's a quirky detail some scribes used to keep small charms or amulets in their workspace, perhaps a tiny figurine of a protective deity, or a token believed to bring clarity and luck. Whether these were genuine talismans or just sentimental trinkets, it shows the blend of superstition and pragmatism in daily life. You start your evening session copying an important land deed. The precision required is immense. One misstroke could change the entire meaning. It's easy to understand why scribes were so highly valued. They literally held the truth in their hands. There's ongoing scholarly debate about how much creative input scribes had when composing texts. Were they mere copyists following strict formulas, or did they sometimes add personal flair or commentary? The clay offers no direct answers, but subtle variations suggest a spectrum of autonomy. Outside the city sleeps, but you work under the warm glow of your lamp, your stylus scratching softly. The tactile sensation of clay beneath your fingers is oddly comforting, rough yet malleable, much like the culture you help record. At times, you glance at a small, worn tablet hanging on the wall, a practice exercise from your apprenticeship years, filled with early mistakes and hopeful signs of progress. It reminds you that mastery is a slow, patient climb, and even the greatest scribes started with shaky lines. Eventually, your eyes grow heavy and you set down your tools, satisfied with the day's work. The quiet hum of night and the faint smell of burning oil cradle you toward rest, ready to greet another day in the life of a Mesopotamian scribe. Dawn creeps slowly over the mud-brick horizon, and you find yourself awake before the first light. The air is cool and still filled with the scent of damp earth and baking bread from nearby ovens. As you prepare for your day, you reflect on the rituals that punctuate a scribe's morning, simple yet deeply rooted in routine. Your morning begins with a small offering to Nisaba, the goddess of writing and wisdom. Though you are far from a temple priest, this quiet act connects you to centuries of tradition. It's said that Nisaba gifted humanity the power of language and record-keeping, a gift you wield daily. Historians still argue whether such religious observances were universal among scribes or varied by city and period, but the symbolism remains strong. Breakfast is modest, a slab of barley bread dipped in honey with a handful of figs to satisfy your sweet tooth. It's nourishing, if unexciting, but it fuels your focus for the demanding work ahead. Interestingly, some scribes preferred to drink beer with their morning meal, a practice that surprises modern sensibilities, but was quite normal back then. The brewing process was intricate, and beer held a social status all its own. You step out into the brightening streets, heading toward the schoolhouse known as the Aduba, where young apprentices gather to learn the art of cuneiform. The Aduba buzzes with quiet murmurs and the sharp scratch of styluses against clay tablets. The walls are lined with instructional texts, from simple signs to complex legal codes. A quirky tidbit, teachers sometimes used exaggerated hand gestures and loud chanting to help pupils memorize tricky symbols. Imagine a cross between a strict tutor and a theater director. You smile, remembering your own lessons, filled with both patience and occasional frustration. The scholarly debate continues about how scribes were trained, whether by rote memorization alone or through more interactive methods involving storytelling and practical exercises. It's likely a mix of both, evolving over time. As you watch the students, you feel a pang of nostalgia. Your role isn't just to copy texts, but to pass knowledge forward, shaping the minds that will one day carry Mesopotamian civilization's legacy. It's a heavy responsibility, but also a quiet honor. The morning wears on, and you settle into your routine, the rhythmic tap of stylus on clay marking time. The city hums around you, alive yet orderly, a testament to the structured life scribes help sustain. By midday, the sun climbs high, casting sharp shadows over the ziggurats' terraces and warming the streets where merchants hawk their goods. You feel the heat through the woven fibers of your tunic as you make your way to the marketplace, a sensory feast contrasting sharply with your orderly schoolroom. The marketplace is alive with chatter, bartering, and the rich aroma of spices, baked goods, and the faint scent of livestock. You pause to watch a baker expertly shape loaves of sourdough, their crusts crackling in the oven's heat. Bread, after all, remains the staple of every Mesopotamian's diet, and scribes like you often recorded transactions involving grain and flour. A historical fact to note here: the standardization of weights and measures in Mesopotamia was crucial to trade, and scribes were central to maintaining these records. Your tablets often double as receipts, contracts, or inventories, bridging the gap between economy and bureaucracy. Amusingly, some tablets reveal surprisingly mundane details like complaints about spoiled goods or disputes over price that show even ancient shoppers had their buyer's remorse. These human touches make you smile, connecting you across millennia. Historians still argue whether scribes had any influence on pricing policies, or if they merely recorded events without interference. Regardless, your role in ensuring fairness and accuracy is undeniable. You navigate through the crowd to a quiet corner where a fellow scribe sells freshly inscribed tablets. They offer you a rare luxury, a cup of date wine. Sipping slowly, you savor the sweet warmth, knowing that such indulgences were reserved for special occasions or the upper classes. A quirky fringe fact: some scholars suggest that certain scribes used a form of scribe shorthand to speed up their work, though evidence remains scarce. Imagine scribes racing against time, their styluses flicking furiously as they tried to capture the day's events. As afternoon shadows lengthen, you return to your desk with renewed energy, your thoughts dancing between the chaotic marketplace and the quiet precision of your profession. The contrast embodies the balance you maintain between order and life's inevitable unpredictability. The city's heartbeat pulses gently as you prepare for the next scroll of history to be written. The afternoon fades into early evening, and a soft golden light filters through your window, casting long, lazy shadows on the clay tablet before you. Your fingers trace familiar grooves as you work, the tactile sensation grounding you amid the city's fading bustle. You begin composing a letter, an everyday task, yet one that requires careful thought and precise language. Letters were the lifeblood of Mesopotamian communication, connecting officials, merchants, and families across vast distances. It's said that some scribes were famed for their eloquence, turning routine messages into poetic expressions. One interesting detail: letters were often sealed with a small clay envelope called a bulla, which protected the contents and confirmed authenticity. Imagine breaking open a tiny ancient package full of secrets and intentions. Historians still argue whether these letters were private or commonly read aloud in public settings, adding layers of complexity to their function. Your own role often blurs the line between private scribe and public official. A quirky tidbit: some letters contain surprisingly modern concerns, like requests for loan repayments or grumbling about neighbors. It seems the ancient world had its fair share of petty disputes and bureaucratic headaches. You pause, letting the ink dry before moving on to a legal document. Contracts, court cases, and land deeds all fall under your watchful eye. The scribal profession carries immense responsibility. A single misplaced symbol could alter justice's course. The afternoon's calm is interrupted by the distant sound of a lyre, the sweet notes drifting up from a nearby courtyard. Music often accompanies daily life, soothing souls and marking celebrations. Though your day is heavy with duties, these moments remind you of the lighter side of existence. As twilight deepens, you close your tablets, carefully aware that your work preserves more than words. It captures the heartbeat of a civilization long past, whispering stories to anyone patient enough to listen. The evening settles in quietly, the sun's final rays retreating behind distant mud-brick walls, leaving a soft purple glow over the city. You lean back, rubbing tired eyes, but the day's work as a scribe isn't quite done. There's a rhythm to your routine, a gentle predictability that somehow comforts amid the sprawling complexity of Mesopotamian life. Your thoughts drift toward the social status scribes enjoy. While you are not royalty or priest, your skills earn you a respected place in the hierarchy. You are a gatekeeper of knowledge, a custodian of records that govern trade law and culture. Interestingly, not all scribes were men. Some evidence suggests women also took up the stylus, though historians still argue over the extent of their roles. Today, you overheard a curious debate among your peers about the best way to teach the complicated cuneiform script. Some favor the strict repetitive copying method. Others argue for more interactive storytelling approaches. It's fascinating how even 4,000 years ago, education was a hot topic. A quirky tidbit to lighten the mood, there's a tale of a scribe who, tired of correcting others' mistakes, supposedly invented a shorthand version of cuneiform, making life easier, but some traditionalists claimed it was a scandalous shortcut threatening the purity of writing. As night deepens, the city's noise dims, and the scent of baked bread and crushed herbs drifts from nearby homes. Your own evening meal awaits simple but nourishing barley bread dipped in date syrup, accompanied by a bit of goat cheese. A humble feast, but fuel for tomorrow's mental exertions. Finally, you prepare your tools for rest, your reed stylus, your tablets neatly stacked, the little oil lamp flickering low. Tomorrow promises more scribal adventures, letters, ledgers, and law codes, each tablet a testament to the pulse of this ancient world. You close your eyes, thoughts lingering on the strange, beautiful power of words, how they shape history, one careful mark at a time. You wake slowly as dawn's first light filters through the narrow window slit of your humble home. The familiar scent of fresh mud and baked clay mingles with the distant bleating of goats and the faint murmur of the city awakening. As you rise, you reflect on how your day, like those of scribes before you, is a blend of quiet concentration and the bustling life around you. Breakfast is a simple affair, porridge made from barley, maybe sweetened with a drizzle of honey if you're lucky. It's humble, but sustaining, setting the tone for the demanding mental work ahead. Your tools are ready, tablets stacked carefully, reed stylus sharpened, and your ink, a mixture of soot and gum, prepared in a small clay pot. As you walk to the temple or the palace, you pass through the winding streets of Mesopotamia, where the smells of fresh bread roasting meat and the less pleasant aromas of city life mingle. The chatter of merchants, the clatter of carts, and the rhythmic pounding of workers building mud brick walls form a familiar soundtrack. You settle into your place at the scriptorium, where your role is clear yet endlessly fascinating. Your work supports everything from tax records and trade agreements to royal decrees and literary epics. Each mark you make with your stylus carries the weight of civilization itself. Historians still argue whether scribes were merely clerks or cultural influencers, but it's clear your contributions go beyond mere record-keeping. You are part of a lineage that bridges past and future-preserving knowledge in a world where words are power. As the day winds down, the sun sets again, bathing the city in warm hues. You finish your tasks, pack your tablets, and prepare to rest, knowing tomorrow you will pick up the stylus again, continuing the timeless work of the scribe. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let yourself drift gently into sleep, carried by the steady pulse of history, whispering through the ages. The soft twilight settles gently over the ancient city, and with it comes a calmness that eases your mind. The hum of distant voices fades into a soothing quiet, leaving only the gentle whisper of a breeze passing through date palms and the faint crackle of the evening fire. You feel the weight of the day lift slowly as your breathing deepens and lengthens, syncing with the peaceful rhythm of the night. Imagine the warm glow of the oil lamp flickering beside you, casting dancing shadows that seem to tell stories of their own. Stories of scribes who once sat where you do, tracing shapes into clay, preserving the heartbeat of a civilization long past. Each mark, each tablet a silent testament to lives lived with care and purpose. There is something deeply comforting in knowing that these ancient routines, so distant from modern chaos, were moments of quiet focus, patience, and connection. It's a reminder that despite the centuries, the simple act of writing, of telling stories, has always been a human anchor. So as you drift further into rest, let these images wash over you. Mud brick streets, the soft scratch of stylus on clay, the warm scent of barley bread, and know that you are part of a long, unbroken thread of history. Sleep well, cradled in the gentle arms of time.